I still remember that night. The air felt thick and heavy, like it had trapped every sound and every hope inside our small house. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the empty kitchen, and I could feel the hunger gnawing at me. It was not just the hunger for food, it was the hunger for care, for attention, for even the smallest sign that someone still cared. I had no idea that my own son could betray me like this. I had raised him with love, fed him, guided him through every step of life, and yet here I was, locked inside my own home, my stomach growling, and no one around to hear me. I pressed my hands against the cool walls, tracing the lines of the door that now felt more like a prison gate than the entrance to my home. Earlier that day, everything had seemed normal. My son had woken up with a big smile, talking about a vacation he had planned with his friends. I had been happy for him, thinking he deserved some fun. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker I could not understand, a coldness I had never seen before. I should have noticed it, but I trusted him. I opened the fridge for lunch, only to realize he had taken everything, every last bit of food was gone. And then, before I could even ask him, he slammed the door shut, locked it, and walked away, leaving me staring at the empty kitchen. I pounded on the door, shouted his name, but only the echo of my own voice came back. The wind outside whistled softly through the trees, almost as if it was mocking me. As the hours passed, the reality sank in. I was alone. My son was gone, and I had nothing to eat. I tried the phone, but my calls went straight to voicemail. My neighbors. Away, my friends. Busy. I had never felt so abandoned in my life. The house, once warm and filled with laughter, now felt like a cage. The shadows of the furniture stretched long across the floor as the sun began to set. And every creak of the wooden floorboards sounded like footsteps I feared might belong to someone coming to hurt me. I wrapped myself in a blanket and tried to block the thoughts, but the hunger and fear made it impossible to ignore the reality. By nightfall, my stomach screamed louder than my mind could think. I went to the window, peering out into the dark street, hoping to see a car, a neighbor, anyone. But there was only silence, only darkness, only me. And in that silence, the whispers started, the ones in my head. Why would he do this? Why me? The questions repeated like a broken record, twisting my fear into something heavier, something almost unbearable. I thought about the times I had helped him, the sacrifices I had made. How could someone I loved so much betray me so cruelly? I tried to distract myself. I sat in the living room, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, even though it was empty. Every sound became sharp. The ticking of the clock, the rustle of leaves outside, the soft moan of the wind through the cracks of the door. It all reminded me of my helplessness. The night grew colder, and I shivered, feeling more trapped than ever. Hunger had become a constant companion, and my mind wandered to dark thoughts. What if I never got out? What if my son forgot me completely while he laughed on some sunny beach far away? My heart pounded in my chest, and a lump formed in my throat as tears blurred my vision. Then, just as I was beginning to think I could bear no more, I heard a soft click. My heart jumped. Had someone come to help me? Was it a neighbor? My son returning? I rushed to the door, pressing my ear against it, straining to hear anything. But there was nothing. Just silence again. I stepped back, trembling, unsure if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I was completely at the mercy of my son, and I had no idea what he had planned next. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees, trying to calm my racing heart. But the thought lingered, cold and sharp. How long would he leave me here? How long would I have to endure this alone? The house that once felt like home now seemed like a trap. And I couldn't stop thinking about the sunlit freedom he was enjoying while I starved inside. I could feel my strength slipping, my hope dimming, and yet a small part of me refused to give in. I had to find a way out. I had to survive. Just as I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the other side of the door. My heart froze. Was it the wind? Was it a mouse? Or was it him returning for something I could not yet imagine? I still remember that day, the day the silence in the house became almost unbearable. The scratching sound at the door hadn't stopped. Came and went like a rhythm, soft but deliberate. My hands shook as I pressed my ear to the wood, trying to figure out if it was real or just my imagination. My stomach growled, a sharp reminder that hours had passed without food. I hadn't realized how weak I had become until I tried to stand. My legs wobbled beneath me, and I almost collapsed back onto the floor. But I had to know. I had to see. I had to confront whatever or whoever was there. I edged closer to the door, fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold metal of the handle. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a shout in the quiet house. I whispered his name, barely audible, "Son. Are you there?" There was no answer, only the scratching again, louder this time, more urgent. My mind raced. Could it be a stranger? Had someone come into the house while my son was away? I thought about calling for help again, but my phone had no signal. And even if it did, who would believe me? Who would come to a house where a man, my own child, had locked his parent inside without warning? I sank back to the floor, hugging my knees, trying to control my racing heartbeat. The hunger had grown sharp, like fire in my belly, but fear made it even harder to think straight. I thought about sneaking out a window, but our house was old, the windows small, and the street outside empty. Every escape route seemed blocked, every plan impossible. And yet, a stubborn part of me refused to give up. I told myself I had survived worse things in life. I could survive this too. But the question remained, why? Why would my son do this? What could make him leave me here, alone, starving, and frightened, while he enjoyed himself somewhere else? Hours passed, and the day turned into evening. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room. The house felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed before, the wind rattling the window frames, the pipes groaning, the faint rustle of leaves brushing against the walls. Every sound made my heart jump. I felt like I was being watched, like someone or something was waiting for me to make a mistake. I tried to focus on anything but the fear. I closed my eyes, imagining the smell of food, the warmth of a cooked meal. But the fantasy only made the reality worse. My stomach twisted painfully, reminding me I could not escape this hunger. Then something unexpected happened. A faint light flickered under the door. My breath caught in my throat. Could it be a flashlight? My mind jumped to the worst scenarios. Had someone broken in? Was my son returning with something dangerous? My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I tried to make sense of it. I pressed my ear to the door again, straining for a sound. Nothing. Just the faint glow, pulsing softly, teasing me. I wanted to run, to hide, to scream, but my body refused to respond. I was frozen, trapped in more ways than one. Hours turned into night, and exhaustion began to creep over me. My eyes stung from tears I hadn't realized were falling. My limbs felt heavy, almost numb. I curled into a ball on the floor, wishing for a miracle, for someone to come, for anything to break this suffocating silence. And just as I was beginning to drift into a restless, uneasy sleep, I heard a soft, deliberate whisper from the other side of the door. It was faint, almost too quiet to hear, but it made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't be here," the voice said. I froze. It wasn't my son. It was too cold, too strange, too threatening. I pressed my back against the wall. Every nerve on edge, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. My mind raced with questions, fear clawing at my chest. Who was it? How had they gotten inside? And why had they chosen this night, this exact moment, to make themselves known? I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but I couldn't. I was trapped, weak, alone, and utterly unprepared for whatever was waiting on the other side of that door. Then, just as the whisper faded, I heard the faintest click. My stomach dropped. The lock was moving. Someone was trying the door. Panic surged through me, stronger than hunger, stronger than fear itself. My mind spun, imagining every terrible possibility. Was it a burglar? Was it my son returning in some twisted way? Or was it something far worse? Something I could not yet understand? I sank to the floor, holding my head, my heart hammering, my body trembling. The cold of the floor seeped through my thin clothes, but I barely noticed. All I could focus on was the sound of that lock and the thought that my life, my sense of safety, my very existence, was now completely in the hands of someone or something I could not see. And in that silence, broken only by the faint click and the soft wind, I realized that this night was far from over. Whatever was coming next would change everything. I still remember that night. The night when the house stopped feeling like my home and started feeling like a trap I couldn't escape. The faint click I had heard earlier lingered in my mind, echoing in the empty rooms like a warning I couldn't ignore. My hands were still pressed to my knees, but my eyes had been fixed on the door for hours, willing it to remain closed, yet dreading what would happen if it opened. The wind outside whispered through the cracks, carrying the faint smell of smoke from someone's fireplace down the street. A smell so ordinary and normal, yet it felt alien in the horror of my own home. Hunger gnawed at me relentlessly, but fear had grown sharper, almost unbearable. My mind tried to reason, tried to find a solution, but every option seemed impossible. I tried to move again, slowly crawling toward the door, my bare feet brushing the cold wooden floor. Every creak sounded louder than it should, and every shadow seemed to stretch and twist toward me. I pressed my ear against the door again, straining to hear the faintest sound. A whisper, a shuffle, something, anything. My heart raced so fast I was sure the walls themselves could hear it. And then, just when I thought my mind might break from the tension, I heard it, a faint, almost deliberate breath from the other side. Someone was there. Someone was waiting. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt paralyzed. And the sound that came out was nothing more than a hoarse whisper of my own fear. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. My stomach growled so loudly I was certain the noise would give me away. My thoughts turned dark, imagining the worst that could happen. I pictured my son laughing somewhere far away, thinking I would remain trapped forever. I pictured strangers entering the house, taking advantage of my vulnerability. I pictured myself losing all hope. The cold floor bit into my legs as I shifted, trying to find some comfort, but there was none. The house, which had always been a place of warmth, now held only shadows and whispers. My mind kept circling the same questions. Why would my son do this? How could he leave me starving, alone, afraid? And what did that whisper mean? Then I heard it again, a faint shuffle, soft but deliberate, coming from the other side of the door. My heart froze. My mind raced. Could it be my son returning? Or someone else entirely? I pressed myself into the corner, trying to make myself invisible, hoping whoever was there would leave. But the sound continued, growing closer, and I realized that hiding would do me no good. I had to act. My hands shook violently as I reached for the handle, praying it wouldn't move or break, praying I would somehow gain control. But just as my fingers touched the cold metal, the whisper came again. Clearer, this time, "You can't stay here forever." The words cut through me like ice. I pressed myself against the wall, trembling, feeling my chest tighten with fear. Someone was definitely in the house. Someone who knew I was trapped and was taking their time to toy with me. I wanted to run, but I had nowhere to go. The windows were small, the doors locked, and the streets outside were empty. I felt the weight of my own helplessness pressing down on me, a pressure so heavy it made it hard to breathe. Hunger, fear, and exhaustion combined to make my thoughts sluggish. Yet each whisper and movement made my heart jump like a trapped bird. And then I heard it, a key turning in the lock. My stomach dropped and my mind froze. I wanted to run, I wanted to scream, I wanted to disappear into the shadows, but my body refused to move. The handle began to twist slowly, deliberately, as though whoever was on the other side wanted to make me suffer with suspense. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I could feel sweat running down my face, mixing with tears I hadn't even realized were falling. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to act, but I could do nothing. I was completely at the mercy of whoever or whatever was about to enter. The door creaked open slowly, and a shadow fell across the floor. I could see nothing clearly, only a dark outline, tall and looming, moving in silence. My stomach clenched painfully. My heart nearly stopped. Fear had taken over every part of me, yet a small spark of defiance flickered inside. I would not let myself break completely. I whispered to the shadow, my voice trembling, Who are you? What do you want?" But there was no answer. Only the silence, heavier than before, pressing down on me like a physical weight. And then, in the faint light, I saw movement. Something deliberate, careful, as if studying me. My blood ran cold. I realized that whatever had entered was not here by accident. It was here for me. And then I understood with a sudden, horrifying clarity that my son's betrayal might have been the easiest part of the night. The real danger had just begun. I still remember that night, the night when the shadows in my home felt alive, moving with a purpose I couldn't understand. The figure in the doorway didn't speak, didn't move closer, but just standing there. It made the room feel smaller, colder, heavier. My stomach twisted from hunger and fear, and my hands shook so badly I could barely hold them in my lap. I wanted to run, to hide, to scream, but the room seemed to close in around me. Every breath felt sharp, cutting through my chest like knives. I realized then that I had been trapped by more than a locked door. My own mind, my own fear, had become a cage almost as strong as the one my son had built for me. I tried to steady myself. I reminded myself that I had survived many storms in my life, that I was stronger than this terror. I focused on the details, anything I could see in the dim light, the shadow's outline. The faint glint of something metallic in its hand, the way it paused just out of reach. My eyes adjusted slowly, and I noticed something that made my stomach sink further. The shadow wasn't moving like a stranger in a hurry. It was deliberate, careful, almost studying me. And in that moment, a cold thought hit me. This was not random. This person, or whatever it was, knew I was here, knew I was alone, and was taking their time. The hunger in my belly screamed louder than ever, and I realized that it had begun to weaken me. My legs ached from sitting too long, my head throbbed from lack of food and sleep, and my thoughts were fraying at the edges. I wanted to beg, to cry, to plead for mercy, but my throat had dried up completely. All I could do was watch. And then the shadow moved, a slow step toward me, and my heart jumped into my throat. I pressed myself against the wall, curling into as small a shape as I could make, hoping to disappear, hoping somehow that if I didn't move, I would be left alone. The sound of its footsteps echoed in the empty house, deliberate and careful. I could hear the faint scrape of shoes against the wooden floor, and every scrape made my stomach lurch. I whispered my son's name again, barely audible. "Son, please, is that you?" There was no answer. Only the shadow moving slowly, silently closer. My mind screamed at me to think, to plan, to do something, but hunger and fear had robbed me of clarity. I could feel my strength slipping with every passing second. And then, suddenly, a voice broke the silence. Not my son's, not human, even in its tone. It was low, cold, and deliberate, like ice sliding over stone. "You've been waiting for something, haven't you?" It said. My blood ran cold, and I shivered violently. How did it know that? I hadn't spoken aloud a word of my fear or my thoughts. I pressed my hands to my mouth, trying to stop the trembling, but it was no use. The shadow seemed to sense my panic and moved again, closer this time. And I realized with horror that I was completely powerless. I wanted to fight, to run, to do anything, but my body betrayed me. Hunger and exhaustion made every movement feel impossible. I could feel my heart racing uncontrollably, my mind spinning with images of what could happen next. And then I noticed it's something in the shadow's hand. A small device flickering with a faint red light clicking softly. I didn't understand what it was, but I could feel that it was important, dangerous, and intended for me. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears, and I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me like cold water suddenly. The shadow stopped just short of the light. The red glow reflected on the walls, casting long, twisted shapes across the floor. I swallowed hard, trying to control my breath, trying not to let the fear crush me completely. What do you want from me? I whispered, my voice breaking. The shadow paused, then tilted its head slightly, as if considering my question. And then, with deliberate slowness, it spoke again. You've been forgotten, left behind, and now it's time to pay attention. My stomach twisted. Pay attention. What did that mean? Was this really about my son, or something else entirely? I felt a surge of desperation. I had to survive. I had to find a way out. But every thought, every plan seemed to vanish before it even formed. The shadow moved again, closer, and I realized with a sinking feeling that my night of terror was far from over. Whatever was about to happen next could change everything, and I had no way of knowing if I would survive it. I still remember that night, the night when fear became something I could almost touch. Something that pressed against my chest with every heartbeat. The shadow in front of me hadn't moved closer yet, but its presence was heavy, suffocating. Like the air itself had thickened to hold me captive. My stomach ached with hunger, sharp and relentless, but it was nothing compared to the tightening fear in my chest. I pressed my back against the wall, curling into myself, trying to make myself small, invisible, hoping somehow that if I didn't move, it would leave. But I knew better. Whatever this was, it wasn't going anywhere. I tried to think, to plan, to find any way out of the nightmare I had been thrown into. My son's betrayal had been shocking. Yes, but now it felt like something even darker had entered the house. I kept repeating the words in my head. You've been forgotten, left behind, and now it's time to pay attention. What did it mean? Was this shadow connected to my son? Or was it something entirely separate, something I had never imagined in my worst nightmares? My mind raced, but exhaustion and hunger made it difficult to hold a single thought for more than a few seconds. I felt my strength slipping away with every passing minute. Then the shadow moved. Not quickly, not suddenly, but in a deliberate, slow, almost mocking way. I could feel its gaze, or what I imagined as its gaze on me. Studying, testing, measuring. My pulse throbbed in my ears, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold them in my lap. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but where could I go? The windows were small, the doors locked, and the streets outside empty. I was trapped, completely powerless, and utterly alone. I swallowed hard, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. But it was useless. The device in its hand flickered again, casting red, shifting light across the walls. I could see numbers, symbols, patterns I didn't understand. My stomach tightened. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel deep down that it wasn't a simple toy or tool. It was something dangerous, something meant for me. I took a shaky breath and whispered, "Please, just tell me what you want. I'll do anything." My voice sounded small, broken, almost drowned out by the roar of my own fear. The shadow paused, then tilted its head slowly. As if amused by my desperation, "You've been waiting for someone to notice you," the voice said again, cold and deliberate. "You've been ignored, left behind, starving for attention. Now you will see what it means to be remembered." The words made my blood run cold. I pressed myself tighter into the corner, my legs trembling, my stomach twisting painfully. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to fight, to do something, but I had no strength, no plan, no hope. All I could do was watch, listen, and pray that somehow I would survive this night. Hours passed in a haze. Every sound in the house, the wind rattling the windows, the pipes groaning, the faint creak of the floorboards was magnified in my mind. My stomach growled so loudly I was certain the shadow could hear it. Yet it did nothing. It waited. I realized then that this was a game, and I was the only player who didn't know the rules. I thought about my son, about how he had locked me in and left, thinking this would be a punishment. But this was something else entirely. This was beyond punishment. This was something personal, something deliberate, something designed to make me suffer. Then, without warning, the shadow moved closer, and I could see more clearly. Its features were still hidden in darkness, but the shape of its body was clear, tall and imposing. My stomach twisted in fear, and my pulse pounded violently in my chest. I pressed myself against the wall, wishing I could disappear, wishing I could somehow become invisible. And then I saw a tan object in its hand, small, metallic, and dangerous looking. My mind froze. I didn't know what it was, but instinct told me it could end everything in an instant. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The shadow tilted its head again, and I felt the weight of its attention crush me. Then it spoke, slowly, deliberately. The first step is survival. The next step will change everything. Akut. Move. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare, my heart hammering, my stomach twisting, knowing that the night had only just begun. And whatever came next would decide everything. I still remember that night. The night when fear became a living thing in the room with me. The shadow stood there silently, its presence pressing down on me like a heavy blanket soaked in ice. My stomach churned with hunger, but even that ache seemed small compared to the terror clawing at my chest. Every sound in the house, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the wind scraping against the window, the creak of a floorboard was magnified, echoing like a warning. I pressed my back against the wall, wrapping my arms around myself, wishing I could disappear into the floor. Yet somehow a small, stubborn part of me refused to surrender to panic. I had to survive. I had to understand what was happening. The shadow shifted slightly, just enough for me to see the glint of the object in its hand. It was small, metallic, but unlike anything I had seen before. A faint red light pulsed from it, casting eerie patterns across the walls. I didn't know what it was, but instinct told me it was dangerous. My mind raced with questions. Why was it here? What did it want from me? And most importantly, what did this have to do with my son? I had thought his betrayal was cruel, unforgivable, but now it seemed like a prelude to something far darker. Something I could not yet grasp. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling like thin sticks under my weight. Hunger made every movement painful, but fear made it almost impossible. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but the sound stuck in my throat. The shadow did not move to attack, yet the way it loomed, silent and deliberate, made me feel trapped in a cage far worse than the locked doors or empty fridge could ever create. I whispered my son's name again, my voice breaking. Why? Why did you do this? No answer came, only silence and the steady, almost mocking glow from the object in the shadow's hand. As minutes dragged into hours, I realized I was running out of options. The small window in the living room offered a glimpse of the dark street outside. But the glass was old and thick, impossible to break with my weak arms. The door, my original prison, was still firmly locked. And the shadow, it simply watched, patient, deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. A sickening thought crept into my mind. Maybe this wasn't just about hunger or fear. Maybe this was a lesson, a punishment, a test. And I had no idea what the rules were or if surviving it even depended on my strength at all. Suddenly the shadow spoke again, its voice low and deliberate, sending chills straight through my spine. He left you for a reason, it said. He needed to see what you were capable of. And now, so do you. The words twisted inside me. My son, my own child, had locked me away and gone on vacation. And now this shadow, whoever or whatever it was, had come too. What? Judge me. Teach me. I pressed my palms to my face, my mind spinning, my body weak. Yet a small spark of determination grew inside me. I would not give up. I had to survive. I had to fight even if I didn't understand the rules yet. The shadow moved again. This time closer, and I could feel the cold from it, seeping into my bones. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, and I felt like I was balancing on the edge of a cliff with nothing to hold on to. Then, in the faint red glow of the device, I noticed something that made my heart stop. A note. A small folded piece of paper resting near my feet as if it had appeared out of nowhere. My hands shook violently as I reached for it. The shadow didn't move to stop me. It simply loomed, silent, patient, watching. My stomach churned, my chest tightened, and my trembling fingers opened the paper. The words on it were simple, yet they cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. If you want to survive, you must face the truth about him and about yourself. My blood ran cold. My son, the shadow, myself. I didn't understand, and yet a dreadful understanding began to form in my mind. Whatever had begun with my son's betrayal was far from over. The next step, the truth was about to reveal something I could never have imagined. And then, as I folded the paper back, the shadow moved again, and I felt it. Something brushing against my shoulder. Cold, deliberate, warning me. My heart pounded violently. I froze. Whatever happened next would change everything. I still remember that night, the night when the house felt like it was closing in around me, the shadows stretching longer, darker, heavier with every passing minute. My hands still shook from the cold brush of the shadow against my shoulder, and my stomach ached from hunger, gnawing at me like a relentless animal. But the fear was worse. Every nerve in my body screamed at me that something irreversible was about to happen, that the betrayal I had felt from my son was just the beginning of a much larger nightmare. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to make myself small, to become invisible, but I could feel that invisibility was meaningless. The shadow didn't care. It wasn't here to be polite or wait. It was here to make me understand something I wasn't ready for. I unfolded the small note again, staring at the words, trying to understand what they meant. If you want to survive, you must face the truth about him. And about yourself. My mind raced, trying to find sense in the cryptic message. Could it be my son? Or something else entirely? I felt a bitter surge of anger. How could my own child do this to me? How could he leave me starving, terrified, alone? And yet, beneath the anger, a cold, gnawing fear began to take root. Maybe this shadow wasn't here because of Hemet, was here because of me, or because of the secret I didn't even know I carried. The idea made my blood run cold. I tried to take a step back, to put distance between myself and the shadow. But my legs trembled violently, weak from hunger and stress. The shadow didn't advance. It waited, patient, deliberate, like a predator studying its prey. The device in its hand continued to pulse, a rhythmic, glowing reminder of the danger I couldn't yet see. My breath came in short, shallow gasps, and I realized I had been holding my breath for minutes without knowing it. I swallowed hard, trying to gather courage, but the fear clung to me like a second skin. I wanted answers. I wanted to run, but I couldn't do either. I was trapped then. Suddenly the shadow moved again, closer this time, and I saw it. Outline of its face, still hidden in darkness, but with a hint of something familiar. My stomach dropped. Could it be my son? No, it couldn't be. The way it moved, the way it spoke in that cold, deliberate tone, this was not human. And yet, there was something about it that made my heart tighten with recognition, a memory I couldn't place. My mind raced. Had my son brought this creature here? Had he made a deal I didn't know about? Or was this punishment something far older, far stranger than a simple betrayal? I sank to the floor, hugging my knees, trying to make sense of the impossible. Hunger burned in my belly. Cold sweat ran down my back, and fear gripped my chest so tightly I felt like I might not breathe again. The shadow crouched slightly, tilting its head, and in a voice that seemed to echo inside my skull. It said, "The truth is closer than you think. But first, you must confront your fear." I shivered violently. Confront my fear? How could I confront this? How could I survive something that seemed unstoppable, something that had already stripped me of safety, food, and my peace of mind? I realized then that survival wasn't just about escaping. It wasn't about screaming or running or waiting for help. It was about understanding, about seeing clearly, even through the fear. My stomach tightened painfully as I tried to force my mind to focus. to push past the terror, to remember who I was and what I had survived before. I had faced storms, illness, heartbreak, but this was different. This was personal, and it involved my son somehow. I could feel that the events of this night were intertwined with choices I hadn't even known were mine to make. And then, just as I began to gather a small measure of courage, the shadow spoke again, its voice slow, deliberate, and chilling. He left for a reason, and now you will see why. My heart stopped. My mind froze. I wanted to ask what it meant, who it referred to, what reason, but my voice wouldn't work. I was trapped in a silence so complete it was almost physical, and the shadow loomed, patient, deliberate, waiting for me to act, to make a choice I didn't understand. Then, in a movement faster than I expected, the shadow extended its hand toward me, the device glowing brighter, filling the room with red, pulsating light. My stomach churned, my knees shook violently, and a shiver ran through me like ice. I knew in that moment that everything was about to change. Whatever was coming next would reveal a truth I had not been ready to face. A truth about my son, about myself, and about the night that had trapped me in this nightmare. I still remember that night, the night when the shadows no longer felt like part of the house, but like living things. Watching, waiting, judging me. The red light from the device in the shadow's hand glowed brighter, casting twisted shapes across the walls, across the floor, across me. My stomach churned violently, my knees shook, and a cold sweat ran down my spine. Hunger was almost unbearable, but fear was stronger. It pressed into my chest, my throat, my limbs. Every sound in the room, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the groan of the old wooden floor, the wind scratching against the window felt amplified. Urgent, like warnings I couldn't escape. I pressed my back to the wall, trying to make myself small, trying to imagine that invisibility could protect me. But I knew it couldn't. The shadow moved suddenly, deliberately, and I saw the faintest hint of a face. Partially hidden, yet familiar in a way that made my stomach twist with confusion. My mind raced. Could it be my son? Or something connected to him? My fear collided with disbelief. How could this be connected to my son's betrayal? What had he done that I didn't know about? The device in the shadow's hand pulsed rhythmically, and I realized that every pulse seemed to match the pounding of my own heart. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but my body refused. I was trapped, and I could feel that nothing I did could change that. Then the shadow spoke, its voice slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly calm. He left to test you, to see if you were strong enough to face this. My mind froze. Test me. Strong enough? I shook my head, my stomach twisting painfully. Test me. My son locked me in. He left me starving, alone. Why would he do this? My voice cracked, trembling with emotion. The shadow didn't answer immediately. It just stood there, silent, watching me struggle to make sense of the words. I pressed my hands to my face, tears flowing freely now. A mixture of hunger, fear, and despair. Finally it spoke again. He is not the enemy, but neither is he your savior. What awaits you depends on your choices. Will you survive the night, or let it consume you? The words hit me like ice. My son was involved in some way, but this was bigger than him. This shadow, this presence, this device, whatever it was, had its own purpose, its own plan. And I was caught in the middle, powerless, starving, trembling. My stomach growled loudly, reminding me of my weakness, and my head ached from hunger and stress. And yet, even in that terror, a small spark of determination ignited. I would not be defeated. I had to survive. I had to understand. I forced myself to stand. Every movement a struggle against the trembling of my body, against the weakness in my legs. Hunger twisted painfully inside me, but determination forced me forward. The shadow did not move to stop me, simply watched, patient, deliberate, like a teacher waiting for the lesson to begin. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to focus on anything I could control, my movements, my breathing, my thoughts. I reminded myself that I had survived storms before, that I had faced hardship, that I was stronger than this for Ivan. If it didn't feel that way, then, without warning, the shadow extended its hand, and the device pulsed rapidly, filling the room with a blinding red light. I had to shield my eyes, stumbling backward, my heart pounding, and in that moment, I understood. This was not just about fear or hunger. This was about truth. The truth about my son, about myself, about the night I had been locked in, abandoned, and tested. The light glowed brighter, and I could see images forming in my mind, flashes of my son, of choices, of secrets I had never known. My chest tightened, my stomach lurched, and I realized that whatever was about to happen would change everything I thought I knew. And then, as the red light pulsed once more, the shadow whispered, low and deliberate, "Face it or be consumed." My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed. My body trembled violently. I knew, deep down, that the next moments would reveal everything, the reasons, the secrets, the truth about my son and what he had done, and I had no choice but to see it. I still remember that night, the night when everything I thought I knew about my son, about my life, and about safety itself began to twist and unravel. The red glow from the device in the shadow's hand painted the walls with shapes that seemed alive, moving and shifting as if mocking me. Hunger clawed at my stomach. But fear had become something far worse, something that made my skin crawl and my chest tighten until it was hard to breathe. My hands shook violently, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. Yet some stubborn spark inside me demanded that I stand, that I face whatever truth this shadow had brought into my home. The shadow moved closer, silent but deliberate, and I could finally make out more details of its face features that were human-like, but with something unnatural in the eyes, something that chilled me to the bone. My mind raced, trying to connect the pieces. Was this my son somehow? Or was it someone or something he had summoned? And why? The note, the device, the whispers. The silence, all of it, pointed to something bigger than just a cruel prank or a vacation gone wrong. It was a test, a revelation, a trap. And I was right in the center of it. Then the shadow spoke, its voice low, deliberate, and full of a strange authority that made my stomach twist. The truth you seek is tied to him. Your son's choices were never random. He left you to prepare you for what comes next. My chest constricted. Prepare me for what? I wanted to shout at him, to scream at my son for abandoning me, but the words stuck in my throat. The hunger made my thoughts foggy, but the fear kept me painfully aware. My mind kept circling the same impossible questions. Why me? Why now? What secret had I never known? The device in the shadow's hand pulsed again, and suddenly images flashed across the walls, like projections from a screen. I saw my son Young laughing, running, but then the scene shifted. He was older, serious, meeting people I didn't recognize, handling objects I couldn't name. My stomach lurched. My son had been involved in something secret, something dangerous, something that explained why he had locked me in and left me alone. And yet, I still didn't understand what it was or why it had to be revealed in this way. The shadows flickered with the images, red light bathing the room as if the walls themselves were alive. Holding me captive, I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, my stomach twisting, my hands trembling. Hunger, fear, and confusion warred inside me, each feeling sharper than the last. The shadow crouched slightly, tilting its head, studying me, testing me, waiting for my reaction. My heart thundered in my chest. I wanted to fight, to run, to scream, but I had no strength. No weapon, no escape. All I had was my mind, and even that felt clouded, fragile, almost useless in the presence of this impossible figure. Then it spoke again. This time the words hit me like a hammer. He had no choice, and neither do you. My stomach dropped. No choice. My mind screamed in denial. I wanted to argue, to fight, to resist, but I could not. The red glow pulsed again, and I felt the room itself vibrating, as if time had slowed and the walls were closing in. My body shivered violently. I realized then that this was no ordinary test. This was a reckoning. The night that had begun with hunger and fear had now become a moment that would determine everything, the truth about my son, the truth about myself, and the path I would take to survive. And just as I began to comprehend the enormity of it all, the shadow leaned closer, its voice a whisper this time. I scolded, cutting through the panic. Look closely, or you will regret it. My eyes widened. The red light flashed once, twice, and I knew with a cold certainty that what I was about to see would change everything I had believed, everything I had trusted, and everything I thought I knew about my son. And about the night that had trapped me in this nightmare, I still remember that night. The night when everything I thought I knew began to twist into a nightmare I couldn't escape. The red glow from the device and the shadows hand-washed over the walls, flickering like flames that held secrets I couldn't yet grasp. My stomach twisted painfully, but the fear, sharper and heavier, pressed down on me, making it almost impossible to breathe. My legs trembled violently as I tried to stand, tried to focus, tried to understand the impossible. I had been locked away, abandoned, starving, and alone, but now I realized that all of that had been only the beginning. The shadow moved closer, deliberate and calm, and I could see more clearly the faint glimmer of something behind its eyes: knowledge, power, something terrifyingly deliberate. My mind raced. Could it be a messenger, a guardian, or an executioner? I didn't know, and my fear twisted sharply with the bitter anger I felt toward my son. How could he leave me like that? How could he enjoy a vacation while I suffered in his absence? But the shadow's presence hinted that there was more to the story, a hidden truth I had not yet been told. Then, as if reading my thoughts, the shadow spoke, its voice low and precise, echoing in the room like a cold wind. The time has come to see why he left. To understand, you must watch. The device pulsed brightly, and suddenly the walls were alive with images, memories, moments from the past. I saw my son, younger, confused, struggling with decisions that were far beyond his years. I saw him being forced into choices, making sacrifices, balancing impossible responsibilities. My stomach twisted with a mixture of fear, confusion, and sorrow. I hadn't known the full weight of what he had carried or what he had feared would happen if I interfered. The shadow continued, leaning closer, guiding me toward the truth. You must see everything, even what he couldn't show you. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my hands trembling violently. The images flashed faster now, showing moments I had never witnessed. My son negotiating with strangers, hiding things from me for my own protection, and making choices that broke his heart as much as mine. Hunger gnawed at me, but a deeper ache came from the realization that his betrayal had not been cruelty, had been necessity. A desperate act to keep both of us safe from something far worse than a locked door or an empty fridge. Tears streamed down my face as I absorbed the truth, my stomach twisting in ways I couldn't describe. All the fear, all the hunger, all the despair began to shift into understanding, into sorrow and empathy. My son had not abandoned me out of malice. He had left to protect me, to prepare me for a world I didn't yet understand. And yet, the shadow's presence reminded me that the danger had not passed. Whatever had begun with his absence, whatever had been set in motion that night, was still here, still deliberate, still deadly. And then, just as I began to feel the first flicker of hope, the shadow spoke again, low and deliberate. You now see the truth about him, but the truth about you is yet to be faced. My heart skipped violently. About me? What truth? I had survived storms, betrayal, hunger, and fear, but what could I possibly be unprepared for? The red light pulsed faster, bathing the room in its eerie glow, making the shadows twist and stretch in unnatural ways. My stomach tightened, my chest ached, And I realized with a sinking certainty that the next revelation would change everything, not just my understanding of my son, but of myself and of the night that had trapped me in this living nightmare. And then, in the sudden silence that followed the pulsing light, the shadow whispered one final chilling warning: decide now, or be consumed. My breath caught in my throat. My body froze. My mind raced. The night, the hunger, the fear, it had all led to this moment. The next choice I made, the next step I took, would determine whether I survived, whether I understood, and whether I could face what was coming next.